Hey guys, I'm Gerard from SERIALNINE, and today we're going to talk about putting a CD009 transmission into an IS300. This is going to be the ultimate guide to show you how to do everything, but we're going to use this car. That's a JZX110. These are actually the same cars. They also share the chassis with the JZS161 Crown. Me, I don't really care. This is going to be the ultimate guide for a CD into an IS. It's using our CD-PRO kit. We're going to show you how to cut the transmission, install the CD-PRO, hammer the tunnel, the whole 9 yards. Stay tuned, it's going to be very informative. We're also using a new OS-Giken twin plate street clutch in my car.
All right, so what we're using today for the swap is the SERIALNINE CD-PRO kit, which comes with the CD999 shifter. This is the X-Member Pro, so this one is a billet cross member made for IS300, which the MarkII Blit is basically the same car. And the special part about this one is we're using an OS Street Twin. This is a new clutch we have not used yet, but it's kind of a new option we're trying to offer to the customers. I think it's good about 600 or 700 horsepower, but it is sprung and it's a twin plate, larger style diameter. Yeah, so with the CD-PRO kit, you get the bell housing with the hydraulic release bearing, and all the hydraulics are pre-plumbed, and then they pass through over here. So that's a banjo that goes, from the clutch master. And then you got your bleeder port right there. This is the cover plate. And on the back, it's the QR for the instructions. You got a Nissan genuine seal, Nissan genuine oil light bearing for your pilot. This is the pilot bearing. ARP flywheel bolts. You get your bell housing bolts. There's normally more of those, but right now I only have 4. A genuine Nissan gasket. This goes between the bell housing and the actual transmission. Then you get an energy suspension transmission mount, which comes with the bolts. This is a cutting guide. We're gonna show you how to use that later. And this is also an input shaft cutting guide. So yeah, this is the CD999 shifter, the latest iteration. And this is a SERIALNINE SK3 green shift knob. So this new OS Twin is pretty cool. We're really excited to try it out. Should have a little bit better drivability than Tilton, but hold more torque than the single plates. So we're using a 2006 CD009 transmission, just an average kind of generic retro tranny. So we'll show you how to sort of draw the line here, cut the front part off, and then mount that bell housing. And yeah, put it into that car. Like I said earlier, we're basically halfway through a 1J swap in this car. It's a 2001 or something Toyota MarkII Blit, which is JZX110, or in this case a GX110. Came with this pilot junk motor, which is a 1G. Yeah, so that crusty thing came out. And also the small diff and small axles. So now we have a JZX diff with a Torsen LSD, JZX axles, and a 1JZ out of my old Verossa. So this car was also automatic before, so we got Altezza side brake, Altezza pedals. Modified that sort of pad to use the Altezza brake pedal, moved them over a bit, and that is an Altezza gas pedal as well. All right, so what we're gonna do today, essentially show you guys where and how to hammer the tunnel. So all these things have to come out. So you will have to go up into the dash and take that out. We'll show you how to do that later. And then we're also gonna show you with some cross hatching, sort of what area and how far and exactly where you need to hammer to get the IS to take the CD009. There might be slight variances from the 110 to the IS, but from what we found, they're essentially the same platform, same chassis, everything. So yeah, all these will need to be cut off, because basically what it is this is a bit convex. It goes like that, and it needs to be completely square across the top 8 inches. So we'll show you how to do that in a second. All right, so we're gonna show you how to cut the transmission right now. And what we're gonna use is the cutting guide, a Sharpie, and you have to use a 3M pad just to kind of clean where we're gonna mark, so that the marker can actually write on the transmission. Normally they're covered in a bit of oil, some dirt, whatever. If you haven't already stripped down your transmission, take off the shifter, take off the blade cylinder, this fork thing. This whole part's coming off anyway, so honestly you can take that off later. So let's get started. All right, so we're just gonna take the 3M pad and you'll be cutting behind this rib, this thickness. So we're just gonna kind of scuff it up and clean off all the grease and oil or dirt.
Bump the tricks out.
All right, now we're done sort of cleaning it up. We're gonna take our Sharpie and our cutting guide, and we're gonna go around behind this rib, just draw a line. Make sure when you're doing the bottom, get all these little areas in here real well, and your line is consistent, 1/8 of an inch from that rib. So basically just go all the way around, mark your line, and then we'll show you how to cut it now. We're also gonna cut off this thing right here, because it does get in the way of drawing your line on this part right here. So try not to cut into the transmission, of course. But yeah, basically make a line and chop that off. All right, so what we're gonna use for cutting today is a Sawzall. Shit, I need a battery. And a cutoff disc. I like Milwaukee, the cordless stuff. It's awesome. The type of blade you want is, you see how it says thick metal? It's got very little teeth. I don't know if you can see that. And people ask why you don't use a cutoff wheel for the whole thing, why use a Sawzall? It does way more work, way less time, it's way cleaner, it's quieter. And yeah, if you look, essentially you're cutting through a cross section of about 4 inches worth of metal. This thing works way better than that thing. So that's why I use a Sawzall. All right, so we're gonna start cutting with our Sawzall. We're gonna start with cutting this back thingy off, where I said you need to cut it off to draw the line. And I forgot to mention earlier, obviously wear some sort of safety goggles. Wear gloves if you want, I don't know. I'm gonna spin this around so y'all can see it. That's it. So yeah, you can see here, basically you just cut that part off and then we continue to draw the line here. Obviously later we're gonna smooth that over a little bit. There's a few other areas on the transmission that we're gonna grind down, and we'll show you how to do that. Might have forgotten to mention it earlier, but this is a vent for the transmission. It's very important that you keep this thing covered when you're cutting it. Normally your tranny would come with that vent. Just keep it covered or put some tape on it, put anything on it, just don't let any shavings get into there. All right, so for this you definitely need your glasses, battery, cut off disc, and you're only gonna do this top rib. All you're doing is putting a spot there for the blade to sit in so you can start your blade. And that's it. And now that you have your blade guide, if you will, you can just continue with the Sawzall. And you can see here, kind of once you've started cutting, you basically, where it gets really shiny, that's where your blade's going. So all you have to do is just follow that along the line, touch the shiny part to the line that you've drawn. That's it. Just like I said, take your time and do your best. You guys might be saying, oh yeah, it's so easy for you. You have this beautiful stand that holds your transmission perfectly. I mean, I've done this like 8 times on the ground. Just use some 2x4s, maybe like a floor mat or something. Just something so the tranny doesn't move around so much. Like I said, floor mats, a couple sheets of cardboard, some 2x4s, same thing. All right, so as you can see, we're fairly good with the cut. We're almost through. There's just a few little nugs left. Those correspond with sort of like the ribs inside here. You can see that because you can see the light shining through. So those are going to be the last ones you're going to have to cut through. Just be careful. This is the part I was talking about where it's really close to the bearing plate. But yeah, other than that, we're very close to being done. All right, so we're just going to take our saw and continue cutting through those ribs. Take your hammer. So for this part, you're going to take your cutoff guide, put it on the input shaft, and what we're going to do is cut right there. It helps when you have a friend to spin the back side of the tranny. Go ahead. As you can see, it's spinning. Let's probably put it in a better gear so that it goes a bit faster. There you go, see? So when he spins that, this thing spins, I spin this on this, and then it cuts it up. Ready? That's it. So now you want to get a flap disc and just chamfer that edge, kind of similar to OEM, make it easier to put the transmission in the car. So we switch out the cutoff disc for a flap disc. Make sure you have your guard on there. I think we're good. All right, so here's the part where you put this thing onto here. And what you have to do first is take off the bearing plate. You're gonna use your new gasket and either one of these rings or maybe no rings. So these are just basically bearing spacers, and for different years of transmission, you either require it or you don't. But basically, if it goes on, you need it. If it doesn't go on, you don't need it. Really simple. So yeah, we're gonna take this thing off and prep it for installation of the belt. So it's a 12 mil and an electric ratchet. You'll notice the 4 bottom bolts have thread lock on them, or sealant. So when you put it back together, you will need to put RTV or something on the 4 bottom bolts. Usually they are actually a different color too. On some of the transmissions, the bottom bolts are gold, the rest of them are silver. Good thing to note, you probably want to have your transmission drained at this point. And there you go. We're gonna put the seal into, we're gonna put the input shaft seal on the back side here, and then basically slide it on, put it on just like you took that thing off. All right, so what we're gonna do is take the input shaft seal and put it in the exact same configuration as the bearing, the old bearing plate. So as you can see, the seal face is down, and it's got to go face down into here. Just open this up and lose it. So here's the seal, back side, front side goes in. Use an appropriate bushing driver that's basically the exact same size. It's going to make it a lot easier for you to put that in there. Nice and even. Try to get it nice and straight. And it will bottom out. You'll hear it. The sound will change. Like that. You good and tight. And there we have an input shaft bearing. So yeah. Like I said before on those, these things, if it fits over, you need it. If it doesn't, you don't need it. So let's start with the 95 mil blue one. And it doesn't fit over, so we don't need it. And we don't need the red one. All right, so just clean up all the oil here. And if you drain the oil, it should be relatively clean once you wipe it down. You should stay pretty dry. Just use a bit of RTV on those lower bolts, like we said. So just put a glove on that guy. The other thing we do, just put a couple of dabs here to hold the new gasket on. Take your new gasket, match it up, and stick it on there. Take your bell housing. That's it. Put the bolts in. These get torqued to 13 foot-pounds, starting from the center, going out. So crisscross, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then basically go outwards. So grab a torque wrench and your 12 mil socket, torque them to 13. And that's it. So make sure that the bell housing and the transmission are not touching in any spot, because that means that you may not have a perfect seal on your gasket there. So there you have it. CD009 with the SERIALNINE CD-PRO kit. All right, so next is to install the CD999 shifter, and we're gonna sort of walk you through that. We do have a complete install on YouTube. This one's gonna be kind of just super quick. Linkage actuator, really simple, slide it on, put the roll pin through. Make sure the roll pin doesn't stick out the bottom. That's it. Linkage actuator, slide it on, roll pin through, don't stick out the bottom. So here's the part that a lot of people mess up. This linkage actuator shaft and this bearing ball fit very, very precisely together. Don't force it on. If you force it on, you're gonna wreck the shifter, and you will need to buy a new ball Delrin linkage actuator setup. It's about 50 bucks, but you don't want to do that. You don't have to, because every single one that's sent out is already pre-fit. So you're going to select your spacers. It's really easy. If there's a counterbore in the transmission, use the spacer that has the shoulder. If there's no counterbore in the transmission, use the straight spacers. That's it. Really simple. Put the spacers on, pull that out, put the shifter on like this. Slide it under, push it into reverse lockout. And just kind of wiggle it until that bearing ball slides on there nice. That's it. Bolts through. $12 mil. That's it. CD999. Okay, so now comes the part where you have to make the car fit the transmission. So what we're going to do is we're going to take some measurements for you, and you can kind of see where you need to widen the transmission, and we're going to draw that on the inside of the tongue of the Blit. Okay, so from the back of the engine, 17 to 21, like that from the back of the motor, needs to be 8 inches across. So we'll see what that looks like. We're going to measure back from the block 17 to 21, and we'll mark that off, and that's where we need to be 8 inches across. So 17, 21, 17, 21. All right, so as you can see, this area right here needs to be hammered. As you can kind of see it better this way. So see how this kind of comes in, it's convex, and that's gonna need to be concave. So we need to have 8 inches across at the very top, all the way up here to get the transmission as high as possible. Kind of got a better view of it like that. So yeah, that's the start, and we'll go inside the car, take all those bolts out in the dash portion, and then we're gonna cut these riv nuts off. They're just gonna get wrecked anyways, and they're gonna prevent you from being able to hammer it easy. So we cut those off, unbolt everything so the tunnel's not being supported, and then we'll hammer it out. As you can see here, this is basically where we need to hammer. and this is where the supports for the dash are attached to. So we're going to take this piece off, and we're going to take that piece off. Usually there's bolts up here and then bolts down here, because this whole tunnel will need to be reshaped, and none of this stuff is going to bolt up anymore. Later on, once you're finished the tunnel, you could put riv nuts into here and reattach this. But we have had cars where even if without this piece, it's totally fine.
This thing has just a giant cluster of wires essentially. Every car from Japan looks like this. It's got like hundreds and hundreds of unnecessary wires. Alright, so now what you're going to do is cut off these riv nuts. You want it to be as flat as possible. None of this like bulky riv nut stuff. So just use your cutoff disc and cut it off. And we'll just repeat that for this side. And now you're just going to smooth them out with the flap disc. Careful not to start a fire in your interior with the grinding. And that's all you want, just nice and smooth like that. All right, so we're just going to scrape off some of this seam sealer here. Because when we hit it with a hammer, we want to hit actual metal and not be dampened by the seam sealer. We usually hammer a little bit around here too, just to make it a little bit easier to put the tranny in. That's kind of where the starter bump is. The starter bump is actually smaller on the CD-PRO than stock. Yeah, a little bit of hammering here goes a long way to, if you're putting trannies in, taking them out a lot. Now you can see it's pretty smooth and ready for hammering. So what you're going to want to use are kind of a ball peen hammer, rounded end, and I use a mini sledge that's sort of been rounded off, as you can see there. Concentrate on the corner first and slowly work your way, and the whole thing will push back. There's an area sort of right here too on the side of the tranny that it doesn't need a lot, but you could probably just massage this a little bit as well to give it a bit more clearance. All right, so right about the time when you notice your hands are super mangled, you should be done on one side. It's very convex here now, a lot of clearance. And on this side, this is stock. So you wanna make this side look like this side. And continue. All right, so as you saw, we used this really dope snap-on shot-filled hammer to do this side. We're gonna try something new for the other side, and we're gonna use an air hammer. So I got a really short little extension. It's called a finishing hammer, so it's like a little bit rounded. And it's nice and small, so we can fit it up in here. Try that out. Definitely ear protection. All right, as you can see, the air hammer made short work of this side and went really, really fast. So across the top here, we have 8 inches. And like I said, I think it's like 18 to 21. It's the corner of the transmission, which is right here. 8 inches, and that goes into that spot up there. Now that it looks pretty good, we're going to try the tranny in. I'm not going to put the clutch on and stuff yet because I need to mark where the shifter is going to be. So we're going to put the tranny up, jack it up, and then we'll be able to see where the shifter housing needs to come through the tunnel. Yeah.
All right, so now we got the transmission up and we can see where we need to cut for the shifter housing to come through into the tunnel. So we're just gonna draw that and cut it open. All right, so we've drawn our line here. We're gonna use a combination of like a drill, a die grinder, and an air saw to cut a nice hole. All right, so you can see we got the hole cut now and we got the transmission up as high as possible. Shifter housing comes into the car, nice, and I'm gonna try to get an OEM boot on there with the boot holder. So we got the transmission mounted into the car, and as you can see, it fits pretty well. Let's see if I can get up in there and show you guys. They do hang a little bit lower, it looks like, on the 110s than the IS. The IS, this part is 5 millimeters below the rails, and it seems like on the 110 it's maybe like 7 or 8 mil. And we ended up using 2 of the spacers. These spacers are available from us to put the transmission as high as possible. Yeah, so it's got some clearance back there. Kind of see some clearance up there. You can see the clearance, and that's it. So of course, with the transmission off, it's a good time to change the rear main seal. And now we're gonna go ahead and put the pilot bushing into the crank. Just kind of go like that. Use a bushing driver, tap it on. And just tap it all the way until it stops. Now you're done when the sound changes. All right, so now we're gonna put the flywheel on and the bolts. So slide your flywheel on and follow the directions on your ARP bolts. You're gonna use the ARP lube under the heads and Loctite glue on the threads. Ready? Make sure you clean off all the ARP lube from around the heads. You don't want that getting into your clutch. So use some brake cleaner and a rag. All right, so once you got the transmission in, you're gonna measure for a drive shaft. Or you can just look up here and I'll put some common measurements right here. But if you have an obscure car and you need to take a measurement, what we normally do is from the transmission seal to the diff flange. You just take that measurement. This one happens to be 57 inches, and you give that measurement to your drive shaft guy. You can either do like I did, which is basically modify the front half of a 2-piece. So this is a stock drive shaft and the front piece has been modified with the CD009 yoke, or you can get a 1-piece made, aluminum one made, carbon one made. The sky's the limit. So yeah, drive shaft. Okay, so what we're gonna use to connect the master cylinder to the CD-PRO is what we like to use, a hard line. So you can buy this bendable stuff from like Pep Boys or Lordco or wherever you may be. Make sure you get the correct one. This one's 10 by 1.0 inverted flare, which goes right into the master cylinder. I'm assuming you have a Toyota or a Nissan or something. And then we get this adapter, which is a 10 by 1 inverted flare on this side to a -3 AN on this side. And then you get the little banjo adapter. That's that guy. And that goes on the CD-PRO. And then this piece is basically a holder, just like factory. It ends up looking like that. That's the clip. That's the brake line. And that, or the clutch line from the master. And this is the clutch line to the CD-PRO. So yeah, looks like this. So we look under the car, we kind of see this like existing stud. I'm gonna mount that guy right there with a nut. And I'll do that now. All right, so when you're done, it should sort of look like that. That's the banjo, soft line, adapter, hard line, and then we'll go up to the top and connect that to the master. All right, so we're almost finished. The last part left is the interior. You can see the shifter housing coming through that nice hole that we cut. I have this piece. It's off Yahoo Auctions. It's kind of like they have them for JZX90, 100, 110. This one doesn't fit my car, but I cut it up and it sort of made it fit. It's not necessary, but we may or may not produce these in the future. So you can kind of just silicone or screw it down. It accepts the OEM boot. If you have the right one, I don't. So then you got your stick, put your stick on. And then we got the SERIALNINE boot holder. So this thing kind of goes on there and clamps on, and that'll hold the factory boot. Just kind of stick that on there. And then, yeah, I mean, it's not perfect, but it'll bolt on. So that'll be all sealed. If it's a street car, obviously you want it to be quiet. It's kind of up to the end user how you want to finish this part of the equation. Race cars, some people don't really care. There's a huge giant hole in the car. I don't really like that. So I'm gonna seal this up. So it'll be all siliconed, sealed with a boot, and then put your center console on. You're done. These pieces, I am just gonna cut it off basically right here, bolt it on as per normal, and then just let the bottom sort of buck. It's attached to the deck and everything anyway, so it doesn't rattle, and it's a Toyota. It's overbuilt. On this side, there's just a small jumper piece that you unbolt it and you can just leave it out.
Pops up.